Hey there. You're diving into mental health and self-improvement, right?
Sounds like it.
And you've given us a really interesting mix to work with. This time, an article from The New Era, TMS and Psychiatry, a PDF that looks pretty research-heavy. Even a LinkedIn article caught your eye.
Oh.
And a YouTube video from Lynette Adkins.
Yeah, she's got some really thought-provoking stuff out there.
Totally. So let's break it all down, all right? Uncover those golden nuggets of wisdom.
I'm game if you are.
I am so game. Let's start with that A New Era article. They talk about the three main dimensions of self-care, physical, emotional, and mental.
They're all connected, right? You can't just pick and choose.
Exactly. It's like they're saying you can't just focus on one and expect the others to magically fall into place.
It just doesn't work that way, unfortunately.
So how about we dig into how those dimensions actually work together? Like, we all know exercise is good for your body, right? But I like how they go a little deeper, talking about endorphins after a good workout.
Oh yeah, huge mood boosters.
Totally.
Yeah.
And not just mood, but how we process all those feelings in general. It's like exercise is emotional self-care too, not just physical.
It's true, though sometimes caring for your mental health gets labeled as selfish. Have you noticed? Like, it's the last thing you're allowed to prioritize.
Ugh, yes. That's the worst. And this article kind of tackles that head on.
Basically saying that prioritizing your mental well-being is the opposite of selfish.
Exactly.
When you're feeling mentally and emotionally balanced, you're more capable of showing up for the people in your life, right? Giving back to your community, doing the things you love.
It's like filling your own cup so you can then share that abundance with others.
Love that.
Me too. And it's cool how the article doesn't stop at the physical, emotional, and mental aspects. There's that spiritual side of self-care too.
Yeah, it doesn't always get the attention it deserves.
Totally. But before we go too far down that road, what about that PDF you sent over? It dives into practical techniques, right?
For all of it. Fitness, meditation.
The whole 9 yards. Plus, it's packed with research, which is always fun to unpack together.
Ha, you know me so well.
I particularly like how it broke down the science behind fitness routines.
Oh yeah, me too.
Not just for our bodies, but for mental resilience too.
So important. You know, there was this one study.
Well, tell me.
It found that people who exercised regularly, even moderately, think brisk walking a few times a week.
Okay, that's doable.
Right. They experienced way fewer symptoms of anxiety and depression compared to those who weren't as active.
Wow, that's a pretty big difference. It kind of debunks the myth that you need to be hitting the gym super hard every day to see benefits. Like, finding a routine that works and sticking to it is what matters.
100%. Consistency over intensity.
Which reminds me, they mentioned the Model Health Show podcast, right?
Yes. Great podcast.
Love it.
It's a great resource if you're looking for practical tips on making fitness a part of your life.
And that ties into something else they talked about. Support systems, right? Like, it's not just about working out. It's about who you've got in your corner, too.
Exactly.
It makes a world of difference to have people cheering you on, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Accountability buddies, workout partners, even just friends who get it. That kind of support, it's invaluable.
For sure. Okay, so support systems, check. But we can't forget about meditation, right? The PDF really digs into that too, doesn't it?
It does.
And it's not just the whole meditation is good for you thing, which, like, we get it, but
Right, it goes deeper.
it talks about how meditation can actually help manage really specific conditions like PTSD.
Which, as you can imagine, involves a lot of emotional upheaval.
For sure. I'll be honest, I hadn't really thought about meditation.
Yes. And they found that it helped reduce PTSD symptoms in veterans.
Wow. How?
It calms the nervous system and changes how the brain reacts to trauma. It's like rewiring things,
That's amazing. It really shows how much more there is to meditation than people realize.
Totally.
And just like with that fitness recommendation, the PDF also talks about the daily meditation podcast for guided meditations. Ever listen to that one?
I have, actually. What I like about it is they offer so many different types of meditations. So whether you want to manage anxiety or just relax.
All right, you can find what works for you.
Exactly. They even have body scan meditations, which are amazing for anxiety because they help you connect with those physical sensations and calm your nervous system down.
That's really cool. We're not just talking about some vague idea of meditation here. It's like specific techniques with real benefits.
Right.
This deep dive is already off to a great start. But before we move on, there was one more point from the PDF about stress management, which I think connects nicely to that LinkedIn article.
Oh yeah, that's a great one. The PDF talks about understanding your body's stress response, which is basically this cascade of physical and emotional changes that happen when we encounter a threat.
Like our body's alarm system going off.
Exactly.
And it doesn't even have to be a huge thing. Even small things like work deadlines or even just a crazy to-do list can set it off.
Oh, for sure. Traffic. Don't even get me started on traffic.
Worst.
But yeah, the PDF says that by understanding how your body reacts to these things, that racing heart, sweaty palms, that feeling on edge, you can actually start to figure out your own personal triggers.
And then come up with better ways to cope, right?
Exactly, which is where that LinkedIn article comes in, I think. But we can get into that.
Oh, yes. Let's save that for next time.
Yes, cliffhanger. So that LinkedIn article, right?
Yeah, the one about...
It takes those stress-reducing practices and puts them in this bigger picture of personal growth, you know?
I like that. It's not just about getting through the day-to-day. It's about using those stressful times to learn and grow.
Right, like a stepping stone.
Totally. Instead of freaking out, you can look at those stressful situations as, like, a challenge.
Exactly. And the cool thing is they give you some actual strategies, not just vague ideas.
Ooh, give me the good stuff. What did they say?
Well, one thing was about identifying limiting beliefs. You know those thoughts we have that hold us back?
Well, tell me about it. I've got a whole collection.
Yeah.
But how do you actually figure out what they are? Sometimes they're so sneaky.
Right. The article talked about paying attention to your self-talk, especially when you're stressed.
Oh, that makes sense.
Like, what are you saying to yourself in those moments? Doubt, negativity.
Ouch. Been there.
Once you figure out what those thought patterns are, you can start to challenge them, replace them with something healthier.
So powerful, though, right? Like, our thoughts can literally hold us back or push us forward.
It's true.
Speaking of moving forward, they talked about setting goals, too, didn't they?
They did. And not just any goals. Goals that mean something to you. The ones that connect to your values.
Because if you're working towards something you don't even care about, what's the point?
Exactly. It's got to have that heart connection, right? Otherwise, it's just another thing on your to-do list.
And once you have those goals, I guess it's about breaking them down into smaller steps, yeah.
Exactly. And that reminded me of what Lynette Adkins talks about, in that YouTube video you sent.
Oh, yeah.
Focusing on those small, consistent actions.
She's all about those baby steps, which I love. So much less intimidating.
Right. Like, ditch the overnight overhaul and just focus on what you can do today.
Exactly. And the way she talks about discipline,
She makes it sound...
not like a bad word.
Right. It's self-love, not self-punishment.
Totally. And she's not afraid to talk about those pressures we're all facing, like be more productive, more successful, more on all the time. It's exhausting, honestly.
I know, right? It's like you're never enough. But Adkins says we get to decide what success means on our own terms.
Yes. That's what I'm talking about. Finding what matters to you and building a life around that, not what everyone else is doing.
It's your life, your rules.
Right. Although easier said than done, right? Especially with social media. It's a comparison game 24/7.
Oh, yeah. It's brutal out there.
But it's like Adkins says, real change comes from accepting yourself, being kind to yourself.
Exactly. Not from squeezing yourself into some mold that doesn't even fit.
And that ties back to managing stress too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like if you're compassionate with yourself, you can handle those curveballs life throws at you so much better.
100%. It's all connected.
It really is. But okay, back to Adkins for a sec.
Yeah.
Because I love how she's all about enjoying the ride, not just the destination.
The journey, not the goal.
Yes. Like find the fun in becoming the best version of yourself.
Celebrate those small wins.
Exactly. That reminded me of something else she said about small changes over time. And then she recommended that book, Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
I've been meaning to read it. It's all about building those tiny habits that lead to big results.
That's it. And it's not just about adding good habits, but breaking the ones that aren't working.
I like that. So it's like instead of just saying, I need to work out more,
Yeah.
you're actually understanding like the science of why we do the things we do.
Exactly. You get behind the scenes of your own behavior, Figure out how to make lasting changes.
That's so smart. And honestly, that feels like a common thread with all these sources, right?
What do you mean?
Like whether it's the science behind fitness or understanding how our brains react to stress, it's all about equipping ourselves with knowledge.
Right. Oh, I see what you're saying. It's like knowledge is power.
Right. But before we get too carried away with all this incredible info,
Because it is pretty amazing.
it is, we should probably wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Okay, sure. But before we do that, I'm curious to know what's really speaking to you so far. What feels the most useful or relevant from all of this?
It's funny you should ask that because Adkins' whole thing about systems, not just goals, has really stuck with me.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
Like, we can dream big all we want, But if we don't have the right habits and routines to back it up,
It's just a fantasy, right?
totally, you've got to build something that can actually support those aspirations,
Yeah.
turn those massive goals into bite-sized actions.
Otherwise, you're trying to build a house on sand. It's not going to hold.
Exactly. And it's like that saying, you don't climb a mountain in one jump. You
Mm.
got to take it one step at a time.
And those steps, those are your systems.
Love that. Which reminds me of something else from that PDF. Remember how they were talking about consistency over intensity?
Oh, all the time.
Like, it doesn't matter if you're killing it in the gym every day if you can't keep it up.
Right. Same with meditation, stress management, you name it. It's the consistency that really makes the difference.
It's about making those things non-negotiable, part of your routine, like brushing your teeth.
Exactly.
And Adkins talks about this too. You don't have to go from 0 to 60 right away. Those small changes over time really add up.
It's momentum, right?
Exactly.
Each little win makes the next one easier. It builds on itself.
Love it. It's like this upward spiral of positive change.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's get real for a sec. What about those days when even those baby steps feel impossible? We've all been there, right?
Oh, for sure.
Life gets crazy, you're stressed, and those healthy habits are the first to go.
It happens, but that's where that self-compassion comes in. It's about progress, not perfection, you know.
So true.
Some days you're gonna fall short. It's okay. Just gotta be kind to yourself.
It's like that whole thing about treating yourself like you treat a friend.
Yes. We can be so hard on ourselves.
The worst.
But when we can shift that, approach it with that growth mindset we were talking about, that's where the magic happens.
It's about looking at challenges as a chance to learn, not as a sign of failure.
100%.
Okay, so instead of beating yourself up for missing a workout or whatever, you just acknowledge it and move on.
Exactly. Learn from it. Don't dwell on it. And remember, it's about the journey, not just getting to the finish line.
So well said. Okay, we've covered so much ground today. It's been amazing to dive into all this with you.
You too.
But remember, everyone listening, it's not just about knowing this stuff, it's about using it.
Right. Knowledge is great, but action is where the real magic is.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe take a minute to think about what really stood out to you. What feels like that one little change you could make today to feel a little bit better?
Maybe it's trying a new fitness class, listening to a guided meditation, or even just taking 5 minutes for yourself to just breathe.
Yes, don't underestimate the power of small changes. Every step you take, no matter how tiny, matters.
It's true.
It's been such a pleasure exploring all of this with you. Until next time, everyone, happy diving.